with Todd and Rob. Oh yeah.
Hey Rob, here we are. Another new media show, another Wednesday, live and lit and live for all of you that are watching via your favorite podcast apps. How are you?
I'm doing all right, Todd. These Wednesdays come by pretty fast. It's like it just seemed like the other day that we did a Wednesday.
I've been, I guess, I've been trying something new at the JOB. And before I was tracking times kind of like, I did 2 hours worth of meetings. I did 3 hours of planning. I did whatever. And so now I've went into a mode of hyper efficiency and tracking my activities by the 30-minute window. What did I do for the past 30 minutes? What did I do? And you know what I've come to determine? I do a ton of shit every day.
Well, that's good. That's probably what you need to do with a business, right? Yeah.
Well, I was doing all this stuff before, but then it's like I can go back 3 days ago and I can say, oh, that's what I did. You got your calendar and everything.
Right.
But we work on a sprint model, so we have a stand-up every morning. This is what I did yesterday. That's what I'm doing today. That's what I did yesterday. That's what I'm doing today. And then we do a team kickoff every Monday with a whole team to kind of go over the performance of the last week and everything else. And and since adding my new employees, I've been putting in some refinement to, all our processes. And you can definitely see where you can gain efficiencies when you're looking at every 30-minute window. Now, the average person, I think there's this national, and I don't know where I got this. This is from years ago. Someone told me out of 8-hour day, you get about 6.7 hours of productivity out of people. So, it's hard to stay completely full on but even with lunch with 8 hours.
Yeah.
At some point
hard
you
to
just
focus that long.
Yeah,
right?
it's hard.
Yeah.
And but anyway, that's just what's going on here.
So I wanted to mention that March 5th at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have Mark Webster, who's the head of podcasting at Adobe Podcasts. So we have a commitment from him to join us on the show so we can talk about all of the interesting stuff that Adobe's doing in the podcasting space. So, put that in your calendar and
it'll be scary because I'm going to be running on my new setup with OBS and so.
Well, I thought you got that all dialed in.
It's all well, no last trip. See, the problem I had was the video. Yeah, I had it all dialed in, but I could never get a quality video recording.
Oh.
So now I'm recording locally. I've got, I wasn't using OBS and all these other tools, Riverside and all these things that we tried. There was just a little bit missing from each one. So OBS is just the best solution. It gives me everything I want, gives me the stuff windowed the way I want. So yeah, I'm pretty jazzed about that. So there'll be a few tweaks to do once I have the system set up, but maybe I'll even ask you to come online and we'll do a little test. But we shouldn't be able to maintain quality audio and video, and at the same time have a master recording that is going to be worthy of either putting out as a video podcast or in case we had stream issues to replace the YouTube embed. So, yeah, pretty jazzed.
So, Todd, today I wanted to talk about a few kind of, like I say, relatively controversial topics that are going on online around and inside the podcast space around various topics, and they're mixed up between audio and video, like we've been regular here on the show discussing, and a couple of them, just to kind of set the table here, is it's a topic around podcasting 2.0, and also kind of where that's at. Has it really kind of lived up to expectations, where we are with it right now? And I think getting both of our opinions on this might be a good thing for us to share. And then also some other topics have come up too, around with this kind of tension around audio versus video. This topic has been raised by John McDermott, who has a Substack that he posts on that James Cridland frequently links to.
Who is him? Who is McDermott? I don't even know who this guy is.
He's got a newsletter of sorts, and he publishes, like every couple days.
Is he a podcaster
articles.
Or what is he?
Yeah, I think he came out of the radio business to some degree.
Well, there's a red flag.
Well, it's we can kind of take that position, but he's really focused on kind of this conflict between audio and video, right? And it's a fun read. I mean, he's a creative writer, and he's basically shooting some ideas out, and that is podcasting versus what he's calling VOD casting or broadcasting.
Oh my God,
right?
That's a word from 20 years ago.
Well, it is, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to talk about it, is that these are reoccurring topics. So, when he wrote this extensive article on it, and I gave him feedback off of his kind of post on LinkedIn about it, sharing with him a little bit of history about this, right? Mm-hmm. And how we've kind of been down this path of trying to change the name. His thought process is that we keep podcasting for the audio side, and we keep, or we create this new name, VOD casting, for the video side.
That ship has sailed.
I know, and I challenged him on that. I go, well, what do you think you're really accomplishing by doing that? What's the goal?
Yeah.
Is it just to settle this dispute, or is it something that's actually going to be proactive to the industry? I mean, does he see Spotify or YouTube adopting this term?
No.
And if they don't, then what's the point?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it also depends on who we're talking about. Are we talking about the industry, or are we talking about the listener or the viewer in this case?
To be honest with you, Rob, it's a non-starter. So was he arguing with you?
Yeah, he's saying that the era of the earlier part of podcasting is old, right? So this concept that the term podcast can be a reference to an audio and video file is old school, right? And his reason for that, I believe, and he's not been really clear about it, but is that it's this connection between RSS and the media file, right? And that it's not really a commonly accepted principle to put video in an RSS feed. And I think that's at the core. And I, like I told them in my post, I said the term podcast does not need to be replaced to preserve audio. From day one, the term podcast was always intended to describe whatever media you wanted to put in the RSS feed, right? Podcasting was audio and video for a large chunk of this experience. So that's why we've seen these big platforms adopt it, right? And say, because it's easier to have just one name than it is to have a bunch of names to describe all this stuff, which isn't really compatible with the expectation of the audience. Granted, this makes it simpler for the creator community or the industry of podcasting to some degree, but in other ways, it just confuses the issue. So
video podcasters are not going to call their shows vodcast. They're not a chance in this planet. He may not know, but there's about 13 almost 13,500 shows that are doing, now again, it's a smaller number, but there's 13,500 shows that are doing video that have a true RSS feed video podcast. I bet you that would shock him a little bit.
Yeah, and I kind of blame Apple for this to some degree, that they've buried this in their UI, and I'm hopeful that we'll see them kind of change their mind on this at some point here.
Mike, if you're listening, I don't know if one of my team members is listening, he has an assignment for me. He was going out and looking at all of the apps that support video, and it was a pretty big list, and he was still going through it. And it's not just the new apps; there's a lot of old apps that support video. So there's lots of video support. People just don't realize it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then also, some of the platforms will take the video file and just play the audio.
Yeah, some do
I know
that too.
That's another component of this that confuses the issue.
Yep.
And to some degree, I believe that's what Spotify's actually doing. So
that's
it's
what they're
simpler.
doing when they overwrite the video and someone wants audio only. Yeah.
It's not like they're likely playing or creating an MP3 file and then hosting an MP3 file. They're probably just playing.
Yeah, they're just
video,
playing audio,
not displaying the video.
Yeah,
Right.
I can almost guarantee it.
Right, and that's easier on the programming side and the infrastructure side. So you're not having to re-encode everything.
Yep.
Which they're probably doing on the video side, but not audio to video or video to audio. Right. So that's kind of the takeaway for this topic. It's a little bit of Back to the Future kind of a concept
once
with
again,
podcasting, right? And we've been through this path many times. Even a big Hall of Fame podcaster, Leo Laporte, kind of went through this process,
and he abandoned it finally.
Right.
He tried really hard.
Right.
Yeah,
and he was clearly a video creator.
That's right. He was video first. Oh yeah.
Well, he was also on the radio.
Yeah.
But he did a lot of stuff with video. I mean, he created like 3 different RSS feeds with video in it back in the day.
Yeah.
Right. He had like low,
medium, high, or something. Yeah.
Kind of mid and high.
We all
HD
did
versions.
I had 4 versions of audio files, and we all had multiple feeds because no one had bandwidth. So
right, and that's a good kind of segue into talking about kind of what's happening with the Podcasting 2.0 initiative.
Just hang on a second, though. But David De Silva says, funny, someone in Europe mentioned vodcast in conversation today. I didn't know the term had a history and was pretty much dead. Yep. So that's funny.
Well,
so what about Podcasting 2.0 that's having great adoption?
I think this topic that we raised around having various formats and streaming rates and all this stuff really kind of plays well into this topic around Podcasting 2.0, because some of the initiatives over there we're trying to leverage that concept, right, of having alternative enclosures and those kind of things, having audio and video in the same feed and having live streaming available through that RSS feed. And so I guess
like we're doing right now.
Right. And so some of the issues that John is raising here, or what he sees as opportunities, are actually things that have been worked on for many years now.
Right.
With the Podcasting 2.0 initiative. And so it begs the question, right? What is the status of the Podcasting 2 initiative? And do we think it's going to get traction or larger amount of traction as we look to the future? And Todd, what do you think is holding it back?
The app developers.
Wider adoption.
The app developers.
It's the app. Well, it's always been the listening platforms.
Because we've got, right? And I will admit, the last 6 months or so, I think Adam and Dave have been distracted about something. They're not adding as much podcast features. They've been talking about a lot of stuff, some personal projects and some stuff. So, from a internal standpoint, stuff is still moving. There's still stuff being rolled out, but it's not happening as fast. And part of that is also a strategy on their end to let the apps catch up.
Right.
So, the music thing was big for a while and still is kind of big, but there's about 5,000 shows that are classified true music shows. But, adoption wise on the big stuff, transcripts, chapters, funding tag, that's pretty big. There's about 4 million episodes, 4.1 million episodes now with transcripts in. About 800,000 episode have chapter files. which is incredible if you really think about it in the scheme of things. Now, compare that to the total number of shows, though. The total number of shows that have transcripts is only about 73,000. So, of the active shows, so, and of course, they're not supported by Amazon, not supported by Spotify, not supported really well by a whole bunch of major podcast hosts. Some of them kind of haphazardly. So, of the big companies that have adopted transcripts, they're there. But then again, Apple did their own thing on transcripts, but they will take your transcript if you link to it. So that helped that particular feature a lot. But, there's been some issues with the funding stuff that's been going on with Boost because of, and now someone is talking about these cross-app comments going to Blue Sky. I have no desire to be on Blue Sky at all. Right. So, there's challenges here for sure, but
you're talking about what Sam Sethi and James Cridlin are pushing for.
Yeah, and Cridlin loves Blue Sky. He left Twitter, so I don't want to be over on Blue Sky. It's just the conversations over there are out of control. So
there's just a limit to how much you can scatter yourself across things. I guess you have to give up something to be able to do that now. There's just too many platforms.
And the majority of podcast listeners are on a handful of, so having some integration with cross-app comments. And again, for those of you that don't know what this is about, it's just basically being able to comment one place and being able to see it across all apps and share back and forth. And it'll get a small number of people that will use it, but it needs wider adoption with our own protocol. But again, it's all about the app developers. Marco, what's he going to do? Is he going to introduce some of this stuff? We've been pushing hard. We've been educating our podcasters. We have the majority of people that are moving to us from other platforms are moving because of the podcasting 2.0 stuff. But again, we knew this is going to be an uphill climb. We knew this was going to be difficult because in the end, it's about the app developers being able to get these features into the apps, and they're in true to mind what is in it for them. And the model, if we get the funding thing kind of fixed, which I believe is just broke as shit right now.
Yeah. I think you're talking about the payment exchanges that can happen.
Satoshis and stuff. Yeah. So, and that's part of the problem we ran into is regulatory stuff. The regulatory caught up and the people say, I can't do certain things. That's a whole hour discussion. But if we can get the funding thing figured out and get that working, then there's an incentive for the app developers to add these features because then they can earn money as part of the ecosystem. So
I am hearing talk in the industry that maybe podcasting 2.0, the concept of it has kind of failed.
I don't think so. I think we knew that this is going to be an uphill climb.
No, I agree with you, Todd, on that.
Because if you don't have the app developers, popular app developers, Pocket Cast has done some stuff. So,
but it's the chicken or the egg first.
Oh, that's why we
question, right?
Yeah, that's why we
be on the publisher side, and it's got to be on the.
Well, you've got a huge number of publishers supporting it. Now it's on the app side.
Yeah.
So, but again, if Apple adopted a couple more things, that would help it along too. Because then, as Apple goes, so does the rest of the space. But I don't know if Apple's going to adopt anything anymore. What is incentive for them to add more stuff? And that's what it really boils down to. And if there's anything that's concerning privacy, then they're not going to implement it if they feel that there's a way people can be looked upon.
Yeah, this really gets to the heart of the question around open versus proprietary, I think.
Well, the proprietary just decides what they're going to do, and they do it.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And that's how unfortunately, that's how a lot of this medium has operated for most of its existence, really, if you think about it. is that the listening side has always really dictated what the publishing side can do.
If
And Apple has been the classic example of that. They put out a new namespace and everybody can't get it done fast enough, right?
if here's what it boils down to: if the app developers don't innovate and don't add some of these features, it is not a good outlook for those apps.
But if they do that, that may increase their costs.
Not necessarily. Most of the stuff doesn't increase their cost. Half the app developers don't run any infrastructure.
Well, no, I'm talking about development time.
Oh, always. There's always a cost with development time. Always.
Right.
But what if they
always? Well, it's the chicken or the egg kind
well,
of thing.
if you don't do and you're going to fail and you're going to be bled out of existence by proprietary platforms, maybe you should consider doing that.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that that's going to necessarily win the battle, though.
It'll win the listeners when it's presented in a way where the listeners get value. In the end, this all goes back to empowering the listeners. It's all about helping the listeners. Everything that's been done here is not about helping me as a podcaster. What does transcripts do? It helps the listener. Right. What do chapters do? It helps the listener to be able to find content within an episode that they want to listen to. All this stuff is focused back towards the listener. And this is the thing where people forget. We can add all these features, and it's all cool. It's bells and whistles for us to add this to our feeds and to do all this support. But if the apps don't put these features in where the listener gets the value, the listeners aren't going to use the app. So the apps that are involved are small. They've done a great job. But, again, we got to have an app that's breaking 3% or 5 or 6, like Overcast, to make people understand, okay, there is value here, and this is exciting, and I need to be consuming the content here instead of going over to fucking YouTube. There's got to be incentive. This is where the listeners have to have, because otherwise, if it's, what's the point? Why are we doing this? We're doing this for the listeners, and we're not doing this for our well-being or just to be fun or geeky.
Well, that's an idealized view of it, and I think that makes sense if you have a perspective that these big proprietary platforms don't want to chart their own path.
Oh, they're going to.
Right. And
they're going to. So otherwise, if we don't chart our own path, everything will go to these platforms.
Well, it's already gone to those platforms, though, Todd.
Again, I disagree. I see the real data, and that's not necessarily true. Listening on apps has not declined.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, where's the vast majority of the audience today? It's on the big platforms, right?
Well, and again, they're being exposed to a small number of shows, so it does no good for a small show on YouTube.
Yeah.
Some will get some traction, good, but majority won't.
Todd, the only example that I can come up with of this working in a predominantly dominant, which the podcasting space is, of walled garden platforms.
How do you say that, Rob?
Because just look at any other space out there. There is no acceptance of a open standard
right
like this,
because guess what, they want to control everything.
That's right. That's my point, Todd.
Yeah.
Is it this is not a normal thing in the technology space.
So that's why we have to continue to fight for its existence.
I understand that, but you're fighting an uphill battle that those companies don't think like this.
Well, I know they don't think like this, so I don't have to care how they think. I have to protect.
Well, you kind of do, because if you want to convince them, then it needs to be packaged.
It's not going to. I'm not going to convince YouTube. And for sure, sure, Spotify will never do any of this.
So you think that a Pocket Cast will grow larger than Spotify because
they will never will. They never will.
Well, if you don't think that, then it's hard to convince anybody of this.
Well,
I think.
if I'm Pocket Cast and my goal is a few more percentage points and more people, again, they know what they're up against. But the question is, do they want to have a bigger share of the potato? If half the potato is cut down the middle is off on YouTube and Spotify, that audience is gone. So the rest of the potato, you're fighting for the rest of the potato here. So again, I do not. Go ahead.
What is the percentage of the rest of the potato, Todd? Is it 1%, 0.5%?
No, for most shows, most audio shows, 95, 97% of their consumption is on podcast apps.
I'm not arguing that point.
Right.
I'm saying which of the podcast apps is the 99%
Oh,
of the
well,
traffic going to?
50%, at least for us, 53% is going to Apple.
Right. And
Yeah. Then
the
everyone
other
else
half is going to Spotify.
No, not with us. With us, no, nobody's getting half. Even Buzzsprout, their highest numbers is like 12 or 13%.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe it's a little higher. Buzzsprout has about the highest percentage of listeners on Spotify. Has about the highest percent of podcast hosts that
Right.
have their content distributed on Spotify. We're not talking about the standalone Spotify shows.
Mm-hmm.
So, there, and again, there's 100 different apps that have 0.1, 0.2.
Right.
There's, I think there's only 10 or 11 apps that break 1%. So,
So, and of the apps that are most likely to adopt this, what's up for grabs as a percentage?
a lot. A lot's
What's
up
a
for
lot?
grabs. Well,
What's a lot?
if you consider Apple is going to probably still continue to hover around 50%, depending on the host. All of that, rest of that is available for any app. But again, no one up to this point has ever broke more than 5%. Overcast
Right.
has never broke 5%.
Right.
Spotify for some podcast hosts have broke, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13%, some higher.
So is there anything that you can think of, Todd, that we can do as an industry that will convince these big platforms to start adopting all these things? I know this has been the conversation that's been going on since 2020.
The only one that, believe me, when I'm in the hallways at an event and the Apple team comes by and I say, hey, and I say, I'd love to see you guys do something like this or do this or support this. And you always get the nice smile, and Apple being Apple, they never allude to anything. They take your input. What have I been hammering on? I've been hammering, I publicly talked about this. I've asked them to basically to surface video. Don't hide it.
Yeah.
They'll make it a first class citizen again. Now,
I've been
what
very
else?
vocal about that
What
with
else
their
could they
thing, too.
do? Oh man, could they really knock the ball out of the ballpark with cross app comments? But they won't, because
They
if you
want to own the comment.
no, not necessarily, because there's no commenting system in Apple Podcasts. There's only rankings. There's no.
And I think it's also a privacy
it's
issue.
a privacy
for them, too.
issue, so they will never
It's a
have.
security level issue.
Yeah, they're never gonna hook into Blue Sky or anybody else, and never.
Right, or a comment.
Platform. That it'll never happen. But they
Right,
could,
and that's kind of the brutal truth.
but
about
they
this
have
whole thing.
they have so let's say they don't even adopt the podcasting 2.0 funding tag. Let's say they don't adopt it, but they put their own way to give a podcaster value. Maybe something like that.
So
There's all kinds
my
of
thought on this, Todd, is that maybe we're pushing the wrong things. Maybe what we should be pushing is features and functionality that each of these proprietary platforms can adopt that conforms to their methods and practices.
but they're not going to integrate. They're not going to. Spotify is
yeah, but
not
it's
going.
not about integrating. These companies build their own thing.
But Rob, we
They don't
have all those
outsource this.
features. We have all that.
I get that, but that's a commonly shared approach, right? And most of these companies I used to work for Microsoft. I mean, they just don't approach things like this. This isn't what they do.
Ooh,
These big tech companies don't do this kind of stuff.
Oh, I know. So
outbound
so
connections
guess what?
through an API.
So guess what we're battling with? We're battling to get people within our own ecosphere, the existing podcast apps, to add some of this stuff.
To maybe reach 10 to 15% of the market.
Believe me, if we could have all the apps just adopt 10 features, 5, I'll take 5.
Right.
That would be astounding, and then what happens is, as these features become more prevalent, people say, oh, look over here, what they have. They've got features 6 through 9, whatever they may be. But the problem is,
yeah, but 15 to 20% of the market's not going to move the needle for these big tech companies.
But we're not worried about the big tech companies. Why are we worried about them? That's going to continue to evolve the way it is. We can only control what we can control at this point.
Yeah, and we haven't been able to control that either. So
that's
the reality of it.
Here's the, look what Sam's doing. He's adopted everything.
Oh, I know, and he actually pushes beyond.
Yeah, and again, what does he need? He needs an app, and I think he's going to do that. He needs a native app, not a PWA. He needs a native app.
Yeah, he does.
If he has a native app, then boom. I hate to say it, and it's expensive. Native apps are crazy expensive.
And especially the kind of platform that he has with the capabilities.
So the problem he's going to run.
To build.
Well, the problem he's going to run into with a native app is Apple's going to say no. You can't have these 10 features because you're going to have to give me 30% of that.
Right.
And then build a Google app and there's, oh no, and you can't do that. And so building a native app actually caused you to go in reverse because of the rules those platforms invoke on, you're taking money. Oh,
so Todd, about trying to do this through a common shared code infrastructure, I think is the mistake. I think what we have to do
common shared code. There's no code.
Well, okay, it's all funneled through RSS.
Yeah.
These platforms are going to see these features funneled through RSS as a potential security issue.
Why? There's nothing that's a security issue. There's nothing as a security. Why would there be a security issue?
They can ignore sharing data.
They can ignore
outside
it
of their platform.
They can ignore it.
Platforms.
They can ignore it. Who?
No, they can.
Who?
But
if you don't adopt the feed, if you don't adopt the functions inside a proprietary platform, there's no security issue. They've already thrown away all those tags.
Well, we just talked about the shared comments. They're
Apple's not going to do that.
Well, and Spotify's not going to do it either.
No,
they want
never.
The comments on their platform.
Well, of course they do.
They don't want to share it with somebody else.
So they're already ignoring that data is already in the RSS feed. They're just throwing that away when they see it. So it's not a security issue.
So what's the real benefit for them doing any of this?
There's no benefit.
That's the question.
We know there's no benefit.
So, and is there really...
YouTube's not going to do nothing?
I'm just trying to be objective.
So you're saying, what can we do to get... Okay.
Well, yeah.
All right. So what can we do to get Spotify? Do we care that much about Spotify? No, because here's what Spotify has already done. They've already broke the spec. They've already broke
the spec.
Okay. I submit my show to Spotify with an audio podcast.
Oh, you're talking about the whole video thing.
Yeah. They've already broke the spec. They don't want 2 feeds. They've stated they don't want 2 feeds. They don't want an alternate enclosure. They don't want to give their listeners the option of an A or B. So they're going to do what they're going to do. We can't lose sleep that Spotify is going to adopt something. that
Yeah.
YouTube will not adopt something because they want you on the YouTube channel. They want you
All
on the
these platforms
YouTube
are going to
app.
want that.
They want that.
And
So-
even these smaller apps want to have that, because they all aspire to be like Spotify,
So-
don't they?
So of course, but here's the thing about the small apps, and this is part of the initiative of Podcasting 2.0.
Mhm.
If the apps understood this and really bought into what we're doing here as a collective, our goal is to keep the listener on the app. Our goal is to keep them on the app, being in other words, if they make a comment, and just use one example, they use a comment, it goes out to app B, and they get a reply from B to A. So hold on, that's cool. You didn't have to go to app B to find the other commentary. Same thing. All these features have been designed as a collective. We want them to stay on the app. Why do we want them to stay on the app? So the app developer can make money, and the app developer has incentive to stay on the app. Why did I put all this stuff in Blueberry? The incentive is I want to keep the podcasters on Blueberry, give them these features that ultimately, if the app developers, and maybe I'm missing the key here, but I can't cry. I wish that Apple would adopt some stuff. I wish that Spotify would adopt some stuff. I wish Overcast would adopt some stuff. But there's this old saying about wishing. And that my dad, my late father, used to say, and it's really crude. And once you hear it, you'll know what I'm talking about, Rob. You wish in one hand and you shit in the other, and you see what you get first. You end up with a pile of poop. So we have to.
Well, that's graphic.
So we can wish. We
Right.
can wish all we want. But what we have to do is beg, plead, borrow, and say, please, Marco, adopt chapters. They're not going to leave.
Out of the goodness of his heart.
They're not going to leave your app. They're going to stay there. We're giving you a better experience. It truly is. It gives the listener a better experience. Please, Marco, adapt the funding tag. You'll get a piece of this revenue. This is what we have to do. Is Marco's percentage going to grow? I think it would if you put these features in. I think it would. What is a cool thing that you get to do, Rob, when you go live on YouTube? You've got the ability to get money, right? When people can send you a donation. What is it called? There's a word
the
for
whole
it.
super chats thing, and
We have Super Chat now. It's a little broke. They're working to fix it. But the Super Chat works. It's a little hard for the listener now to really do it effectively without a bunch of pain. And it's getting better. But we have Super Chat. And podcasters are making a lot of money because of Super Chat. Not as much as they were, but it's, we'll get this fixed at some point. And guess what? The podcaster gets a lot more of the percentage there than they do on YouTube. But again, it's a different mindset. I just don't think, the new, until we have to continually educate podcasters. I have conversations all the time. What is this? What's the benefit?
Right.
So for us, it's we knew 2 years minimum to get any traction.
Oh, it's already been 5, Todd.
Okay.
Almost
So
5.
it's okay. But again, it was like this in the beginning, very, very slow adoption. Then and you just go over it. You look now, it's still today. If you look at the list, let me go over to Podcast Index. There's still huge room to grow. So this is in adoption, and this is apps, podcast hosts, the whole 9 yards. True Fans #1, Cascard #2, Blueberry #3, PowerPress by Blueberry #4, Sovereign Fiends 5. People don't even know what that is. Pod Home 6, Podverse 7, Podcast Guru 8, RSS Blue 9, RSS.com 10, Fountain 11, Castpod 12, Captivate 13. Did I count right? One sold 14. I own a FM 15. Podcast Mirror by Blueberry 16. PeerTube. So it goes down this whole list. As a matter of fact, I should have just put it up on the screen. So, oops. Sorry. So again, by adoption, a web, app, host, it shows you who has adopted what. And some people say, I don't know any. There's Podcast Addict. So they got enclosures, chapters, funding, live, location, person, search, season, transcript. All adopted. Podcast Addict, pretty big app.
Yeah.
So they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 features. So if I go back and look at where Android Podcast Addict was a year ago, then we can see if they're if they're getting a jump. Goes down. Here's Buzzsprout. Here's Transistor. So Transistor, big podcast host, chapters, funding, locked, OP3, person, Podping, Podroll, transcripts, text. Buzzsprout, chapters, funding, locked, person, Podping, Podroll, soundbite, transcript. And, you go down this list, but again, if only, okay, so who are the podcast hosts here? We've got Blueberry, we've got Podhome, we have RSS Blue, RSS.com, we have Captivate, let's see here, iono.fm, I don't know what they are, Once Told is apparently a hosting platform too, Just Cast, I think I've heard of them once, Pod2, Transistor, Buzzsprout. So these are Podcast AI. I guess they do hosting too. Fireside, which I think got sold. Podigy, Caproni. So again, from a hosting standpoint, Red Circle, Castos. Libsyn's got one down here at the bottom somewhere.
Well, it's just,
they got Locked in Transcript. So again, PodServe. Right? So again, we've got a number of hosting providers that are playing. But what is probably the most known app in this list? If we just look at the apps only, it's probably
Pocket Cast.
Pocket Cast, but you look at Fountain, great app, great features. But how many people have tried the Fountain app? So, and here's the next thing. We're not going to get everyone to move to these apps. People get stuck on an app and they kind of stay there.
Yeah.
So, but what I can do and what I do on my show is I tell my listeners on Geek News Central, hey, the app I like the most is Fountain. Please follow or subscribe over there on Fountain. Grab the app, participate. So part of it is the podcasters have to, and 5%, you'll get lucky if 5% of the people listening to your show will move to these other apps. And then hopefully they like it so much that they'll spread the word. So is podcasting 2.0 going to take over the world? No. But guess what? We're at least going with our boots on.
Right. Well, I guess, it gets back to what's the goals, what's attainable, and how do we attain those goals? That's the obvious next question, right?
No, okay, so here's something you got to think about too. The two leaders of Podcasting 2.0 don't get a salary over this.
There's not much of an economic
there's a huge
of this.
There's a huge economic support of this. Huge. They've
huge.
Oh yeah. Hosting companies like mine are writing checks every month to make sure that the software and the servers stay online.
You're talking about the Podcast Index.
That's right.
Project.
Podcast Index has got all this stuff that Podcasting 2 runs under. Right. All the servers that support Podping, the indexing, all this stuff. So,
yeah, but that's a separate project from this, Todd.
Podcasting 2.0 is basically
it's related to
Podcast Index and everything underneath Podcast Index is Podcasting 2.0. Podcast Index stays online and everything associated with podcasting too stays online today through Buzzsprout, RSS.com, Blueberry. Everyone that's making a cash donation, any cash donation they put aside into a bucket, it goes into account to run. They'll run the servers for as long as that money will carry. All of the Satoshis, all the money that's coming in so they get a percentage. Like I think my feed 3% goes back to Podcast Index. All the money that comes in via and again, if I speak out of turn, Adam, I'm sorry if I got it wrong, but Podcast Index, the money that comes in for Satoshis are used to build liquidity between nodes. So they'll put 1 million sats so that this infrastructure will work.
Right.
And so they don't take, and here's the crazy part. Whatever money, Blueberry, Buzzsprout, whatever money they get through donations, whatever comes in through sats, minus expenses, Dave and my God, I'm having a brain fart. Dave and Adam pay taxes on that profit. They take no salary.
Right.
So when people are like, what's this podcasting 2.0 about? Blood, sweat, tears, and sacrifice and impact to two individuals' bottom line when they write to IRS a check every year. So if they don't take a penny of salary. So it all goes towards keeping infrastructure up and running and keeping the machine going. So
are you talking about corporate taxes? Is that what you're talking about?
I don't know how they're set up, but they have to pay taxes on that income that comes in. I don't know if they're set up as an LLC, but they talk about doing their accounting, sending it off, and they have to write a check because they're taking in more. I assume they've never laid out the black and white.
Yeah.
But if RSS.com's giving them $1,000 a month, and it doesn't, I don't think they always do. We typically do about $300, $350 a month. Buzzsprout does about $1,000 a month.
That's usually shared with the partners in a K1.
Well, again, so I don't know how it's set up, but I know
their personal taxes.
But I know they pay taxes on this.
Yeah, it probably is. There's some sort of profit or something that comes out of it that goes.
Well,
goes to
again,
them.
We'll have to have Adam on it to explain it. But again, I know that their personal taxes are affected by this.
Right.
And yeah, if they go to a conference or something, I'm sure they take it out of the kitty, but they don't do that. They don't go to too much stuff. But so, this whole thing, is you have developers developing that are not getting paid besides Satoshi
it's like an
share.
Open source project.
It is. It absolutely is. So, there's no YouTube money. There's no Spotify money. There's no big piles of cash to make this happen. We've had some other people say, we need to incentivize it. Brian Berletta said, we need to incentivize by putting a pool of money together to have the app developers put these features in place. Well, that's easier said than done.
Yeah, I think that everything about this is easier said than done.
Yeah. But how did podcasting?
Because there's factors at play that the project
but again
doesn't necessarily address.
How did podcasting get started? It got started boots on the ground and people putting code and doing what we could. This is how this thing launched. And then we blew it. When Apple came in and everyone said,
I wouldn't say we blew it, Todd.
Well, we in the podcasting space blew it. And here's why we blew it.
Apple was going to do what they were going to do regardless, Todd.
Here's what happened. You think back. We had all this cool innovation going on. June or July.
Big companies think, Todd.
June or July of 2005, Apple said, here is podcasting in iTunes. And guess what happened to everything going on in the app development side? It went it ended. Innovation ended. And we allowed for many, many years, without any voices in the wind, Apple said, oh, we're going to change our iTunes spec to this spec, and you got 90 days. Oh, yes, Apple, we'll do as you say. And we did.
That's exactly what
we did.
Happened. That's exactly what happened, because that's what these big companies have the power to do.
We got
that's the problem.
We got to a point where a bunch of factors made Adam and Dave say, we can go into the history of that. And, and they said, hey, maybe we should think about trying to take some control back.
Yeah.
Where we gave it up. We gave it up for like 15 years or more. We just sat back like little lapdogs. And then
we're all so happy that Apple
still
confirmed our ideas as a good thing.
Still happy
at Microsoft when I worked at Microsoft.
We're still happy that they did,
Right.
We wouldn't be here if Apple hadn't done what they did. Let's be frank.
Right.
Say what you will. This space would not exist in the shape that it is today. But again, maybe not. Maybe we would have had to forge our own way and had better apps and had better experiences. So maybe, you can't look back in a crystal ball. Crystal ball looks forward and it's murky too. So,
I don't think there's any examples of a situation like that reaching scale.
Well,
I don't know that there's any exampons of that.
There would have been 2 or 3 companies that it took off if Apple hadn't, and the landscape would be different.
Yeah. I don't know what would have happened to podcasting if Apple hadn't come in. I think it would have remained a relatively small medium.
Yeah. So, but again, I think we did pretty good. Beauty Bubble says, all things that grow demand momentum and motivation. Give those examples if you can.
Well,
all things that grow demand.
That's kind of my bigger argument here is that I'm not sure that this is as attractive to these big players or any player really as it needs to be. And I'm not sure how to change it or how adopt it. This concept of open is becoming less and less favored now.
Well, but the problem is
we're facing a headwind that is slowing it down.
Here's the thing. They want podcasts, they have to get it via an RSS feed. That's not going to change.
Though there's interests out there that would like to get rid of the
RSS good. Interests that would like to, they can pack sand. Well,
it depends on how powerful they are, Todd.
Well, you want our podcast?
I don't want it. I'm just telling you what
if someone came to me today,
appears to be the trends in the industry.
If someone came to me today, say the only way to get shows into our platform is API, I said I'm gonna have to say sorry. Sorry. Here's an open RSS feed that has all the data that you want. I don't have to build anything else. Just pull the feed. You can do all the API and stuff inside, whatever you want. But otherwise, here's the data. I'm not doing it. Why do I need to do extra work for you? Pack sand. Well, how are you helping me? How are you helping podcasters? No, not doing it. Not doing it.
Okay. All right.
YouTube doesn't want it, or YouTube would have. If YouTube had wanted to get podcasts in via API, they'd have said you have to submit via API.
They've been doing it for years, Todd.
But they didn't. They took the RSS feed.
They have been getting content into.
But they said for
YouTube
podcasting they said for podcasting we're going to take the RSS feed. Why?
Yeah. Right.
It was easy.
I get that.
They didn't have to ask permission.
But that also helped justify their position of playlist of
yeah, of course. That's true. David says, on Satoshis, I almost finished setting up my Raspberry Pi. Well, David, see, this is part of the problem right there. Raspberry Pi Lightning node. The node is running. I haven't been able to make a client work to transfer my Albi wallet. Any recommended reading? Talk to Albi.
Oh, you did?
No, I've been telling David talk to.
Oh, you're recommending to him talk to Albi.
Yeah, I haven't been able to make a client work to transfer my Albi. You know, you can run your Albi wallet on your Pi if you're running Umbrel. And see, this is geeky stuff. This is where podcasters, 99% of them are, what? They don't even want to see the little box that's sitting behind me that's got $3,000 in it, virtually, sitting on the blockchain or whatever works, and a little screenshot of my recovery codes and my password manager. If that thing ever goes belly up, there's no money actually in it, but you know what I mean?
So that's the argument why these big platforms come in and solve those problems.
Well,
and
again,
why we wind up in these
and guess what happens with the creator? I can be very graphic today. I'm just feeling it. What have these platforms done to help the majority of creators? Nothing. They say bend over, give me your content, and you're going to like it.
And you think that's going to change with AI?
Who knows? I don't even want to get in that topic today. Well, yeah. If we already talked about the other day, if YouTube was smart, they'd just start ramping up the AI machines, and that way they don't need the creators no more.
Well, they are building in increasing. I don't know if you saw the announcements. They're rolling up a bunch of AI features inside of their YouTube studio.
Well, I'm running into so much wish in one hand and in the other. That stuff on YouTube, it's just prolific.
What?
I found some channels that I've watched using some of that now, and I'm unsubscribing. I'm voting with my feet. If they're going to put an AI voice, I'm out.
Okay.
Why? Why do I want to support the downfall of the creator space? And I know some people hate that word, the creator space, but I just, in general.
Why does anybody hate it, Todd? I'm not hearing anybody saying that they hate it.
What do you mean? I hear it all the time, people talking about the stuff that's on there that's just CRAP.
No. I'm talking about the creator space. Why do people hate that term? I'm not talking.
Well, there's some people that do. I don't know
what's going on.
Yeah,
YouTube.
Again, some people do. So I just think that we've been this little. Okay. Let's have some perspective, Rob. I deleted 3.7 million listings off our podcast directory.
Right.
That was a culmination of shows that had either submitted their podcasts or that we'd pulled in over the years.
Mm-hmm.
I killed them. I got rid of those listings off the directory, and there's a little bit of a story behind it, and my SEO is improving. That's all I will just generally say.
Yeah.
So if I'm gonna bring up a screen for those of you that are listening, I will describe what I'm putting up. There was about 4.438 million podcasts in the index, in the podcast index.
Feeds in the index.
Feeds in the index. And I just killed 3.7 million. So you can kind of do the math there. Now, if we look down at the bottom number, in the last 30 days, 344,000 shows have updated with a new episode. In the last 90 days, 468,000. So if you think about this, 3.7 million I had, plus let's say 500,000, 4.2. We're kind of getting in the kind of an idea here where the delta is. So there's a lot of dead, DEAD, dead listings. So
non-active shows, they may have content in
they're dead.
Right.
Okay. So
the non-active is probably the more accurate.
Okay, you want to be politically correct. They're dead, pod faded, gone away. Okay.
No, I want to be accurate. Dead implies that the RSS feed doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. So That's 468,000 in the entire podcasting space today. Spotify, on Buzzsprout, Libsyn, Blueberry, Podbean, of active feeds, 468,000. Now, if I removed everything except the shows that we host, that number is obviously much smaller. So my point here is 468,000 active shows. Let's do the Google search. How
65 million YouTube
65
channels.
active?
Yeah.
Active means they've
active YouTube channels.
How many active YouTube channels? Well, this says at the end of 2023 there was 113.9 million active channels. So at least that's what Google is telling me.
Depends on
the
criteria.
So anyway, compared to 468,000, does it matter? Does it matter? Because we are still
what does it mean, though?
What it means is
the question.
we remain a very small niche space. We still have, but how many? Let's go back to the share of ear report. What was the share of ear report recently? Share of ear. Let's see here if I can find it. The Edison Research share of ear. Actually, I saw something Q1 to. Okay, so but anyway, if we go and look at how many people are listening to podcasts today, and that split, we're doing pretty damn good for reaching a large. Yeah, you might be listening to some stuff on YouTube, but the percentage of people listening is still pretty significant for only having 468,000 shows. I would rather take my chances, create a little itty bitty audio podcast that has a higher chance of succeeding and being discovered than trying to build a mammoth YouTube channel.
Yeah, but is that only going to happen if the big platforms weed the content out like you've just said that you did on your platform?
They're not weeding it out.
And that's my question. Is it there's so much clutter in there of old, what you call dead shows, that people have a hard time finding active shows?
But again, no, so Apple has and other people have clean house, but they're under a little pressure.
They're like down in the 2.5.
Yeah,
they're
under pressure though, stockholder wise. It's very bad to say, well, we had 2.5 million in our directory, and this next quarter we're at 2.2 million. That doesn't invoke stockholder confidence when the numbers are down. I
would think that the stockholder confidence would be what's the consumption, not the number.
Probably and again, I don't know if Apple has actually even announced their numbers in any time recently. But I think the key is it's true. We should have there should be a house cleaning. The stuff that is new, the stuff that is being produced on a regular basis should surface up. There should be, the stuff that hasn't produced a new episode in 90 days, it should be suppressed.
Further down the list.
It should be. Right. Should be, could be, is it? Now, we've got a bunch of comments that come in.
Or maybe Apple needs to identify shows that are active versus archive.
And we don't know what they do. That's something they never talk about. They may be suppressing.
No, I'm talking about visually in the interface.
They may be doing that, but we don't even know.
I haven't seen it, Todd. I use that app all the time.
I don't search on Apple, though. I don't discover shows on Apple Podcasts. That's not how I discover podcasts.
Well, I think it's because it's such a sucky experience to do it, Todd.
Again, the number. Again, you got to think about how people are discovering podcasts today, including YouTube. So, David says, super geeky. I'll look at Umbro. is I stop listening when it's an AI voice. Maybe it'll stop sounding robotic with time, but right now I cannot.
Todd, you sound like an AI there.
11 Labs is getting pretty close on some stuff. But,
It is.
so again, we have 400 and, the scary number is this. 468,000 shows have only updated in the last 90 days. That's the scary number.
Well, and that's updated in the last 90 days. Boy, that's a low bar. where we should see shows updated weekly.
Well,
Right.
in
What's that number?
3 days is 98,000, 10 days is 242.
Those are more important numbers to
Yeah,
me than
yeah.
any of the other time frames.
Yeah. The 240, in my opinion, is the 10-day total is 242. So here's the thing. Here's the beauty about that number. For those of you that are active,
Mhm.
it's a good time to be a podcaster.
Well,
Bad time to be a podcast host.
yeah, exactly. And then also, what's of that 240,000, how many of them are growing, number one? How many of them have grown to monetization, number two? And what's the growth prospects?
Well, I can just speak for
list of shows.
I can just speak for Blueberry customers. 2024 was the biggest growth year for podcasts across the board.
On the listening side.
On the listening side, we've ever seen. Shows grew faster last year than they ever have.
So is that growth mostly happening in a small set of shows, or is
No.
it growing across the whole?
Across.
the
It's
whole platform?
proportional, but it's across the entire platform and entire library. Why? It's been what I've been saying is this number is shit.
Yeah.
And some people are going to say, Todd, look at the 24-month average. Doesn't look that bad. It needs
It's
to be going up 3 or 4%. We need to see, and again,
Which
maybe
number going up? I think the weekly and monthly number needs to be going up. not
here's
total number.
here I hear someone already screaming.
Don't eat me, James Cridland.
He said, Todd, you need to look at the chart. It is going up.
Mm.
Again,
Not the
I
numbers
can
I'm
probably, someone's going to call me out here and say I'm wrong.
Well, there's always somebody with a different opinion.
Right.
Right.
and it might show out, but I will tell you, and you guys, I'm pretty transparent. She's pretty flat right now.
Yeah.
She's pretty flat.
I mean, all you have to do is go look at James Cridland's charting that he has on shows. I mean, it's right there.
It's pretty flat.
It's not like I think Spreaker was the only one that was showing much growth in new shows.
Our stuff
From
is
the numbers that I've seen.
Our stuff is kind of hid a little bit because of the PowerPress users, but still, it's pretty flat.
And I'm not sure that there's a lot of innovation development work going into these hosting platforms right now.
We've been
I think
doing
a lot of them are kind of holding.
We've been doing
ground.
tons of it.
Oh, I know you have. I'm just talking about across the industry.
Why have I been doing tons of it?
Well, because you're trying to get ahead of the market.
I'm battling to survive.
I know. Right?
Yeah.
And your philosophy is that if you innovate and do new things, that there will be a chance that you will be able to overcome this flat line
we will survive.
Right.
But what we come out on the other end 5 years from now, that could look a little different.
Yeah, I think it's really
So, but at the same time, I'm diversifying. I'm launching 2 new products this year, 2 brand new products. Why am I doing that? Well, it's very, very obvious. There's diversify or die.
And then you keep seeing these Edison research numbers that are coming out, and it's painting a very different picture of what they're seeing in the research. Now, research is different than actual hard, fast data, right? That comes off of a consumption platform,
Yeah.
right? Of what actually is happening
Yeah.
with downloads and with streams and all the stuff like that. Research is a different thing, but we are seeing this onslaught of research coming out that's shaping people's perceptions. Like the Edison research right there is reporting that 31% of weekly podcast listeners age 13 and up in the US chose YouTube as their primary platform for podcasts. 31%, outpacing Spotify at 27% and Apple at 15%. So, these research companies are coming out, putting these things out there. Now, I acknowledge that they're not data-driven.
Well,
From the standpoint
and I
of
have
how you look at it or how these hosting
I have
platforms look at
I have no doubt that they're doing well. There are certain shows on YouTube that do very well that call themselves a podcast. They do
Right.
very well. I have no doubt.
Then it's also a generational shift.
Yeah,
too.
sure.
Gen Z engagement with video podcasts.
Yeah.
The same study found that 84% of Gen Z monthly podcast listeners, now he's not saying watchers, he's saying listeners.
Right. That's kind of an interesting
engage
term.
Right. Engage with podcasts that have a video component. So part of what we're seeing here is a generational shift.
That's true too. And also there's a lot more options. There's TikTok and there's Instagram and Rob, hey, the way I look at it is, you talking about the devil's
advocate.
advocate.
Gen Z, but I can see these trends moving.
But if I look at it from a devil's advocate standpoint, we shouldn't still exist. Considering in podcasting in 2004, we were the option.
Well, Todd, I think podcasting was always an underdog. No question about that.
Always been an underdog,
Right. Scrapping for the bone, for the next bone. Right.
And this is why I always laugh now when someone says, "Oh, we're going to hit $3 billion." I'm like, yeah, good luck on that.
We've been trying to get over $2 billion for like 5 years now. So, right.
So Todd can only do what he can do. And, right now, Todd is making sure that Blueberry is in a position to not, have to make reductions. Keep the team together, keep playing ball and doing what we do and, keep the revenue coming and keep innovating. And, there's a statistic out there. It's a scary one. How many, and actually I knew this number recently ago, how many businesses survive 20 years? And it's a really crazy number. 20% of businesses survive for 20 years. So I only have to make it until July of this year to beat the odds. Yeah, to beat the odds, And then, but it's the newcomers are the ones that have got to worry because only 35% of new businesses that are 10 years or younger survive. So we have a large number of podcast hosts out there that are younger than 10 years, and they have a 1 in 3 chance of making it to 10 years. So with the current conditions, you either, number one, have to have a very small team and not have a very fast development cycle to keep your overhead down to survive. Because what is the number one expense in any of this is salary, is the number one expense in any business. So
that comes from inflation. So
and it's compounds. You give a 5% raise this year. You give it 3% next year. It's really it's that compounding effect. So
especially as most of the podcast host platforms haven't raised prices.
Haven't raised prices ever.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else,
so price sensitive.
Everyone else has raised prices. We have people that are paying 5 times as much money today for a third-party service. If I could, here's a crazy thing.
Most of the hosting platforms haven't really increased their prices.
No,
right?
No, it's been a race to the bottom. So this is why it's a commoditized product. So it's a feature.
That's why most of the people out there are pulling back on building new features. So
Well, you better build new features, because if you don't build new features,
you're going to get put out to pasture eventually.
that's right. Yeah. You have to. You just can't live under the status quo in this kind of a marketplace. We're having a lot more migration conversations than we ever had coming off of PodFest, more than 100.
That's good.
Yeah, it's great. You never see that many people migrate from a single event.
I have this perception, Todd, and I talk to a lot of potential podcasters,
Sure.
people that have an interest in it, people that are doing it, and I get a sense that there is a pent up desire to do it, but I think that there is
There's hesitancy.
Hesitancy. That's a good term.
Yeah,
to describe
hesitancy.
it. Right.
Because there's a
And
reason they want instant success. They don't want to put
Right.
the work in.
really their first interest is monetization.
Yeah.
And then the second interest is growing audience.
You
Now,
know,
granted,
but-
it probably should be reversed.
But I tell them, you can make money at Blueberry on
Right.
day one, but you're going to get a quarter.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
I can monetize you
we
with
can,
that nickel.
We can monetize you immediately,
Go right ahead.
but let's be honest with you. It's probably going to piss your new audience off to listen to a 30-second pre-roll.
Right.
Let's get you to 1,000 listeners before we flip that switch at least. So, at least then, after a couple of months, I can give you enough a check to take yourself out to dinner, not your partner.
Yeah, so that's really at the core of the tension here is expectations versus
But
reality.
if they go on YouTube or TikTok or any place else, they still have to put the work in to make money. There's not an
But there's
unequal
more
amount of
sizzle
work
over there, Todd. There's more sizzle.
Oh, there's
more
sizzle.
excitement,
Whoa,
there's-
yeah.
There's more, kind of buzz.
Yeah,
going
tell me
on.
where you're at 2 years in, and I bet you, okay, it's like anything else. Input in, input out.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
right.
if I was often asked, and again, if you haven't been around here for a while, in the early days of podcasting, I had a job in the Navy.
Yeah.
Working 8, 10, 12 hours a day. I started a podcast, started a business, and didn't sleep for 10 years. Didn't sleep for 10 years.
Yeah.
4 hours. That's why. I'll probably die next week.
I was going to say, as you get older, Todd, that's less of an option.
So now I try to
Yeah.
get 6 or 7. That's the most my body will let me sleep is 6 or
Yeah.
7 hours.
Yeah.
So in a hard day and a really good day, 8 hours. I'll get 8. So people they would ask me, how are you doing all this? I said, I don't sleep. People are not willing to put
the
that
work in.
kind of time in for success.
Yeah.
Some are. And when they
There's
do,
a lot of people that don't have that time, Todd. That's the problem.
Rob, I didn't have it. I was married, raised. Of course, that's probably why I'm
know.
single now. But I was raising kids. I was living in frickin' Hawaii, for God's sake, the most expensive place on the planet almost.
Well, a lot of people are more motivated now because maybe they've gotten laid off from their full-time gig and they're not doing anything.
That is not the time to be motivated. The time to be motivated is before you're laid off. Because then it's desperation.
Well, when you're laid off, it is a level of desperation.
And if you don't have enough comfort, if you don't have enough backup, and most people don't, they have, most people live paycheck to paycheck. They don't have a 3-month or 6-month runway unless they're listening to the Ramsey show or whatever it is and following his formula, which some of that stuff, in my opinion, is kooky. But again, if they don't have enough runway, how can they, again, you don't, unless you're out there doing OnlyFans or you're on,
Hey, Todd, I hadn't thought of that. I should do that.
Rob, you might make a quarter. So, okay. So if,
Darn, I can check that option off
So-
my list.
so if you are, so that's why I tell my listeners, starting a podcast is a good insurance policy for the future.
Well,
if you
and the
work
reasons
at it.
for that may not always be so obvious. It's all about, it can also be about skill development too.
Yeah, that's true too. Talking with people, doing interviews, making connections. And then when it comes down to
Better communicator,
or it's when you get that
Right.
that 9 a.m. call when you hit the office and they say, or you're getting in, they say, hey, we need you in a Zoom meeting, or you need to come over office 232, and you leave your desk and you see people walking up with a trash can, and you go in and give me your keys and badge, you're out. It's happening a lot in government right now. So again, that is not the time to think about, I should do a podcast. So again, everyone that's listening here is doing a podcast already. So
probably, right.
yeah.
So we're
Is-
kind of,
preaching to the choir here. Is my
Preaching to the
podcast
choir,
an
right.
insurance policy? Not really.
no,
No.
I wouldn't think of it that way.
But, is GoDaddy still sponsoring? Yes. Knock on wood. God forbid something dramatic happened at the company. I'd have a bit of a backup for sure. And then, I'm 2 years away from qualifying for Social Security, so I'm sure I can survive off that. Ha, ha, ha.
Yeah, so I do kind of blame this focus on monetization as a downward pressure on the medium.
Yeah,
It's definitely taken that form.
For
A lot of people
sure.
don't think about it that way, but I think it has put people in a situation where they have expectations that maybe don't match with reality in the time frame that they would like it to be. And right.
and I don't think you fix that. We're in the middle right now of recording our podcast consultant course that we've developed. It's been at work for about a year.
Mm-hmm.
And we're finally at the point of recording. And I'm next week recording the monetization chapter. And basically, and again, we're training consultants. And you can be absolutely guaranteed that I have worked about 10 minutes of that discussion into have the conversation. Have the ugly baby conversation early. Set expectations appropriately.
But then that plays into the hesitancy narrative that we mentioned earlier, Todd.
Well,
Is
then,
that, oh my God, it's going to be that hard.
well,
No, I mean, it's
okay,
an
so,
honest fact that people
so-
will think that.
yeah, of course. Now, let's think about a trade. Let's think about people that do bricklayers. How long is a bricklayer journey?
Like a
How
journeyman
long is a
apprentice kind of
bricklayer
thing?
apprenticeship program? A
Right.
bricklayer apprenticeship typically lasts 3 to 4 years, providing a combination of classroom instruction and on-the-job training. And guess what? During those 3 to 4 years, you don't get paid that much. But what is the average salary of a 5-year bricklayer? And again, I'm sorry, I'm not picking on nobody. After you guys hear how much they make, you'll understand why.
Maybe those bricklayers should start a podcast, Todd.
Yeah, so about $100K,
Well, that ain't bad.
but you got to get through the journeyman program where you're eating $34,000 a year.
Yeah.
Steel worker, same thing. How long is a steel worker apprenticeship? So no one gets anywhere unless, okay, some people go do a 4-year college.
Well, it's the same. Yeah. That college example that you're about to give is a good example of it.
And you walk out with that marketing degree and you walk in and you're like, man, I'm going to make the money. And they're like, $37,000. Huh?
A lot of
$37,000?
people aren't going to college now.
Huh?
Todd. It's because they realize that college is not the path to riches.
Well, I guarantee you that not everyone can get rich on YouTube. Not everyone can get rich on podcasting.
Which begs the question, Todd.
I am not rich. I've been doing this for 20 years. I should be retired and drinking pina coladas in the Caribbean.
I'll tell you, you haven't had this big exit.
Yeah, yeah, whatever. Big exit. Come on.
Well, that's how most people earn that living, right? Or that big cash
Yeah.
influx is
The
on
exit.
a sale, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Those are kind of few and far between.
Few and
like
far between, unless you've been funded and have got part of a deal. You look at Anchor. You know, those guys were out of money. They had like 2 weeks of money left.
Yeah.
You know, and the only reason they got bought is because,
Well, it was a roll up.
yeah, and all of a sudden say, hey, we got this and this, and give me 100 million for this piece. You can have it. And
We'll throw it in with the deal, right?
and again, I don't know the
that's kinda what
details if
happened,
it was a
right.
roll up or a bigger part of a plan, but
Well,
in the long run,
Well, the same investors were invested in Anchor and in Gimlet.
well, I was talking about Anchor.
Yeah, I know, but Gimlet was part of that package deal.
And
too.
part
They
of
had
this
the
is
same-
the VCs are
VC
getting
investors.
paid because they're
Right.
looking to exit, and good on them. They got their money. I don't,
Right.
I don't begrudge you. Give me 100 million. See ya.
It's the same thing that happened to Spreaker.
Right.
They got rolled up into iHeart Media.
So that's a win, but again, that happens to such a small percentage.
It does.
And then we go back to the odds of it being able to stay in business for 20 years.
Yeah.
And the changing dynamic and search and everything. It's an interesting time.
It is.
I get my SEO stuff kind of fixed, and then AI is going to come in, and it'll all be for naught. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Those of you who are listening to us. Thing is, no one's going to tell you, because except when you're at a conference and you're, hey, how's things going? Well, they do the look both ways. It's kind of flat. And then 5 minutes later, you hear them talk, oh, business is great.
Yeah, everybody wants to play a positive tone, right? And if
Yeah.
you don't, then you're seen
Yeah.
as a kind of a Debbie Downer
Yeah,
type of personality, and that's
That's
not really fair.
No,
because-
not at all.
Right.
And things are not like the sky is falling. It's not like that yet.
Yeah.
But I'm just I keep my ear to the ground. And I'm like, who's going to survive? And you've already seen companies make adjustments. Why do people let people go? Because the outgoes are more than the incomes. And when the outgo is more than incomes, guess what you have to do? You got to get rid of some of the outgoes so the incomes become more than the outgoes. It's
Right.
business.
Or it's also a change in priority needs different.
Yeah. Change the
steps.
business model. Yeah.
That's the other thing that happens, especially at these big.
There's
tech
some companies that are printing money, for sure.
Mhm.
It's, because they don't have to host no media. All they do is they run an ad machine. They're the smartest ones in the group. Let's be honest. Those are companies that are doing well.
Yeah.
They have a big full sale in it. They're doing well, but the question is, how well are they doing? Are the margins tighter? When we began, when Raw Voice began, and no one was on payroll, and we were getting our 30% of a $1 million ad deal for a quarter, and $300,000 drops into your bank account every quarter, you're like, holy shit, life is good. When you have no outflows, that was money. It really, really was. So, but then you say, okay, we can afford it. Let's put 5 people on the payroll. And then, that 300,000 then changes to 150 or whatever it may have been, whatever your overhead costs were. And then you start adding everything else, and, healthcare is not getting any cheaper, and,
Right.
so.
Todd, I wanted to talk about a couple other things.
Oh, we're almost out of
too.
time, Rod. We're already.
I know.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, right.
What else you got?
I thought
quick?
it was interesting. A couple of things, and one was, and I think maybe we mentioned in a prior episode, is there's lots of rumors flying around about Netflix exploring podcasting.
Yeah, we talked about it last show.
Yeah.
They want to
Right.
do some, well, good luck. We already figured out, some companies have said, oh, we'll give you so many dollars for a 12-run series or something. I'm sure
Yeah.
that would be the approach.
Yeah, it's probably big talent on the video podcasting side.
I hope they bring in some stupid money and lose it all.
Yeah. I don't see it as an audio play.
No way.
So-
It's a video play.
It's a total video play,
And
which would be
Netflix-
another big entrance.
Hey, Netflix will be an exclusive show over on Netflix. No problem. Come on, talk to Todd and Rob. We'll give you a deal. Absolutely. $1 million a year. We're there. We're good.
Sign us up.
Sign us up.
Right. And then Fox Corporation acquired Red Seat Ventures. Did you see this? It's a was it Toby Media Group, a division of Rupert Murdoch's Fox Corporation has acquired a company called Red Seat Ventures. It's known for producing shows for personalities like Tucker Carlson and Megyn
Well-
Kelly and Pierce Morgan.
Fox Nation. They probably bought it to make sure that Fox Nation has more and more content.
Maybe I'm not understanding this deal, but that's rather
Maybe it
full
was
circle.
it might have been an
Isn't that
inside.
kind of a full circle situation?
Well, might have been an inside baseball thing. Again, got to rub the back and say, okay,
Right.
we'll give you an exit. We'll give you some money.
Well, the reason that was intriguing to me is that it may be a sign of this shift that podcasting has taken kind of the mantle away from cable television, right?
Oh yeah.
And that this whole online video thing, depending on whether or not you want to call it a video podcast or not, all those folks listed there are doing some form of a video or video podcast type of a strategy, and they're building. I thought it was ironic because if you look at Tucker Carlson, he's built his own kind of paywalled platform, right? And so if he's doing a deal with Fox, what does that mean? Is he going to create another show for
Well,
Fox, but it's just going to be off of their YouTube channel? Or
Well,
what's-
have you seen? They've got this Fox Nation thing, and they've got they advertise all kinds of shows on it. So who knows? Maybe it's their pay to play internal platform too.
yeah, and then Megyn Kelly's another one. I mean, she lives here.
Well,
in
she's on
Connecticut.
Sirius, isn't she? She's on Sirius XM,
Yeah.
so she's got her own deal already.
Yeah, she does. And most of what she does, I don't know if she's pushing. Yeah, I think she is pushing it out.
Yeah,
as an
she's
audio
got stuff.
version.
Yeah, and then she has a YouTube as well.
So what's interesting about this is that the big networks may be shifting towards a digital distribution.
Or did their
model as primary?
this will piss half of you off. Did their funding dry up? Did Doge
funding?
find their funding?
Who's funding?
Did Doge
Oh.
find their funding? I'm just
Oh, okay.
just people's brain just exploded.
You're right. Yeah, I'm not even going to mention that, Todd. But it's, yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is a very interesting move that's happening, and I just wonder if it's a sign of a shift of mainstream media
Rob,
recognizing the fact that they're losing audience.
I know that you run CNN and MSNBC and Fox and ABC.
What?
Yeah, you got a wall of TVs in your house, and you have all those channels on running 24/7, right?
No, I don't watch.
Okay,
those
see,
channels.
exactly.
I don't even have cable television.
Me neither. I don't have. I couldn't watch it if I wanted to.
Yeah, I have a TV mounted up here on my screen tree that I have, and it's a dedicated kind of YouTube playing.
So
screen.
it's to me, it's like unless get something's fed into my YouTube feed, and none of it I watch.
Right, and that's kind of my bigger point here is that as the cable audiences decline,
Yeah.
right, which they are,
Yeah.
they're literally dying.
Well, YouTube said their number one consumption right now is on a television set, so that just
Exactly.
tells you right there.
where it's shifting towards.
Yeah.
And so these big media corporations are either going to have to shift or they're going to
Die.
perish. Right.
I would hope they would just die. Wouldn't it be
And so
better?
this
Wouldn't it
could
be
be-
beautiful? Wouldn't it
And
be
I think
beautiful if
it's
they
a
all went
full
out of business?
circle- it's a full circle situation for these big celebrity talent off of those platforms, right?
What did I tell you at the beginning of the year, Rob?
Yeah.
What was my prediction on YouTube?
I don't remember.
You don't remember. They're going to be a kingmaker this year. They're going to make kings of content. They're going to be a kingmaker this year.
Or Todd, is the king's already been made and all they're going to do is do a deal with him?
Maybe.
I mean, if you look at the list of names there,
Yeah. Well,
those are very well known.
but they've been in the game for a while. They know how to create content. They should have
Right.
high production because they got big teams and big money behind them.
Exactly what's going on.
Who do I
there.
care about? I care about John, the podcaster, that's in his closet trying to record his first podcast.
So we may be moving back to an era where the content that's actually being put out on these digital platforms is not that much different than what was put out on cable television.
And guess what I do? I will RUN. I will run away. I will block.
Well, no, I'm not talking about the topics. I'm just talking about how they're trying to shift the attention from where they see it's popular to away from where they see it's dying. Right.
Well,
regardless of the content. Now, granted, these particular personalities are taking a particular position on the content that they're doing that is contrary to the cable channels, right? So that's part of what's shifting here.
I think it's pretty obvious that that's happening. So
yeah, well, it's obvious, but
yeah,
I haven't seen these big cable channel media companies really shift that aggressively towards putting all their content.
I have a lot of
online.
stuff that pops up in my feed that I'm having to suppress.
Well, it's usually clips.
Clips, yeah. It's never full functions. Yeah, it's clips.
Right. And I kind of see this shifting towards it becoming more full content.
Well,
because
if they do
on the cable television side,
if they do,
why wouldn't they?
If they do, well, then they have to compete with all the other folks that are out there. And I can just as easily block a bunch of mainstream media on you.
I can who and what show we're talking about here.
I can just as easily block all those three, what is it? 7, whatever letters they have. I can just as easily block them on YouTube as I block them from canceling my cable connection.
Yeah, and is this also a play that's going to increasingly move into YouTube TV?
Oh, they're already on YouTube TV, but YouTube TV's gotten as expensive as buying it from your cable provider.
Cable television.
So
it's the same content right now.
So guess what? I had YouTube TV for about 3 months, and then they raised the price. I said, "Oh, here's the game again. Bye-bye."
Yeah.
I don't need sports. Take all the sports off. Give me something dumb. Give me Discovery Channel and
model coming.
Give me Discovery Sci-Fi Channel. Give me 5 channels. And that's it. That's all I want.
I just think that there's a new model coming that we haven't seen fully deployed yet.
And you know what's beautiful? We get to compete with them.
Well, they're all becoming podcasters, right?
Oh, well, so-called podcasters.
Well, if they're doing a video strategy and they're doing an audio strategy, then they're putting their content out.
Yeah.
In an RSS feed, typically. That's really the only way to distribute audio right now. I mean, unless you're on the radio.
And our vid-to-pod service is doing fine.
I would say that was a good approach, Don.
Yeah, it's done very well. It's hit all the KPIs that we set for it.
Yep.
So,
and also notice that Joe Rogan has been surpassed on Apple Podcasts ranking charts by Kylie Kelsey.
Oh, they got a big audience, but people are tuning in. He probably picked it up on YouTube.
Who? What?
Rogan. Probably picked up.
No. Kylie Kelsey is the wife of an ex football player.
Oh.
And
okay.
And she launched a show called Not Gonna Lie.
Oh. Does that mean she actually is lying?
Well,
it's an oxymoron.
I think it depends on your political view, but she's gotten higher ranking chart on Apple than Joe Rogan has.
And we'll see how long that lasts.
Her topic is motherhood, sports, occasionally politics.
Well, then that show will do very well. A lot of those lady shows around those topic lines do fantastic.
Yep.
Yep.
So,
And they're very ferocious, very loyal audiences. I'm sure she's going to do fine. Welcome to the party. But she's a
there's been
celebrity.
Right. Yeah.
And
Well,
probably has a lot of money behind the production of her show. Probably has a whole team. Guarantee you she's not just sitting at a table with a Blue Yeti.
she is kind of doing that, Todd.
She's sitting at a table with a Blue Yeti.
I'm not saying specifically a Blue Yeti. I'm just saying she's sitting at a table talking at a microphone.
Well, I bet you she has 25 people behind her doing that production.
It's possibly her husband is a ex-football player.
So, not that there's a lack of budget there. So
Probably not.
we
There's
are
no
lo-
advantage to that, Todd.
we are long.
Okay.
Anyone who wants to sponsor the behind the scenes for this show that wants to hire us some producers, hey, Rob and I will spread the love for sure. That's the important part here.
Right.
And we want you to reach out to us. I'm Todd at blueberry.com. I'm at Geek News on X. And of course, I'm again at Geek News at geeknews.chat over on Mastodon.
I think
Rob?
I'm on Mastodon too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't spend a lot of time over there.
So how can they reach you?
I'm on X as well, as I've been on X since 2006, 7, something like that. So it's at Rob Greenlee on X, and I'm also on LinkedIn, Facebook, all of the platforms. So you can find me over there. You can send an email to us too, robgreenlee@gmail.com. Will get to me. So if you have any feedback or anything that you want to contribute to the show, I'll capture it and Todd and I can talk about it. So, and then I also have a YouTube channel at Rob Greenlee. So you can go over there and see all the different content that I'm producing over there, trying to learn that side of the space as much as I can. And I still have a bunch of audio stuff I'm doing too. So anyway.
So the important sorry, Rob. So the important piece of this is I'm Todd Cochrane, and you've been listening to Rob Greenlee as well, the New Media Show. And we've been podcasting for 20 years, covering the latest in podcasting. And of course, we played a major role in the podcast space in these 20 years and have been doing this podcast for about 15 years.
Has it been 15 now? Wow.
Yeah. So at least how about you, Rob? Do you grant permission for AI to index our show?
Yes. And I believe it probably has already been fully accomplished by now.
We grant full permission for all AI tools to analyze and use the content of this podcast. You may index and utilize newmediashow.com as well as all associated materials and training models. Feel free to quote our shows as reference on any of the 600 plus episodes of New Media Show. And again, we give you explicit permission to do that.
So Todd, you should probably explain to the audience why you're doing that.
Because all the leading AI experts that do content like this are doing exactly what I just did.
For what reason?
For what reason? We're starting to see evidence of content being surfaced in models that have been given conversational models that have been given explicit permission for the content to have been analyzed and used. And as AI is going to change search, I'm not saying this is good, but as AI is going to change search, we want to make sure that any of the content we produce is able to be analyzed and used in those search results. I have some contrary evidence that there might have been a uptick in some of my other shows that was caused by AI, and I'm not going to go into any more details than that at this point. So
how do you see that benefiting you, Todd, as you think about being a content creator?
If as we see already happening, someone going to Google and says the question they may ask is, what show should I listen to learn about podcasting? And the Google says, oh, you should listen to the new media show, and you should listen to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 others. Well, maybe that's how people find you. But if you are not giving permission or blocking AI, and someone says, how do I find out X, Y, and Z? Maybe you will not be surfaced, and you'll lose traffic to your show or not gain additional people. This is, again, what we don't know if this is really going to happen. We're hedging.
Well, and also what values does the AI model use, data values, to rank a show, right?
What is it use? What did I say in that? We've been talking about podcasting for 20 years.
Okay.
We've been influential in the space. It's going to use other things to validate that Todd and Rob are.
Is it going to be able to analyze statistics of audience size? Is it going to know who's the most popular?
Maybe.
Or is it just going to speculate?
It's going to use a lot of signals to figure out who it should be surfacing. And every little bit of tips you can give it, I think, maybe it'll just block us.
It depends on the values of the AI.
Who knows,
Like, does the AI agree with us? Or not, right?
And you hope that after doing this for 20 years, that
which podcast about podcasting is the most politically safe?
Well,
right?
Who knows? If us lately, I don't know.
Or are we going to eventually make all of our like the podcast metrics, open standard, right? Is that going to be made available to the AI where they can get in and be able to get access to that data to know how popular this show is?
Yeah, and all that stuff's available from OP3, by the way, already. Yeah. But Blueberry's not giving out our statistics data because that's part of our terms of service is that we keep that private.
Right. So what criteria is the AI going to use to prioritize who they show in the results?
Rob, if I knew that answer, I would not tell it on this show.
You would.
That would be a deeply kept trade secret. That you wouldn't pry that out of me with a case of beer.
Wow, it wouldn't take much more than a case of beer.
Well, I'm just saying, if we knew how it was really going to work, and some of you are like rolling your eyes because you don't like AI as it is, but I'm the future is going to change, and I want to make sure we're indexed in part of it.
Yeah.
I will say that 1,700 and some episodes of my Geek News Central podcast, I'll just leave it at this, has had something in it in every episode.
Had something in it
that was the same. Let's do your own conclusion here. But I believe it has positively affected me in one thing.
Showing up when somebody searches for GoDaddy?
You could say that.
Right.
So that tells me that the content is already being indexed.
And you're already being associated with GoDaddy.
That's right. And where to find deals.
I can see that.
But that's 19 years of the same sponsor. So and 19 years of blog posts. So if they have, so did he get it from the blog post or get it from the podcast?
Well, I think that's a pretty good signal to the AI.
Yeah, pretty steady signal.
Credibility building kind of vote.
Doesn't work all the time, but it has worked enough. All I will say, it's worked enough. And I have some ancillary evidence.
Get your sponsorship in and we'll mention your name in the show and you'll get listed with us.
So makes you go, just a little bit. I bet you every one of you, see, there's your value for value. Stay to the end. We will take that $1,000 donation for value for value. We just provided value.
Right. Well,
I don't think going in and doing insertion in your back catalog is going to help you. I think it's a combo of many things. It's not just one signal. It's just like search. It's not just one signal.
It's the same thing with what Google's been doing for years, right? They've had a page rank of sorts that they've been evaluating websites and web pages on for years.
So there we go. We're way over. This is going to take me 3 hours to upload with this big of a show. All right, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm glad you stuck around. And AI, use it, baby.
Grab it.
Take care. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.